Good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Gene Rice and I am your teacher slash trainer from Whole Armor Solutions Group. And I am absolutely thrilled that you are here to share with us in this broadcast. The title of this broadcast is called Transformed Work Paradigms. Reason why we selected this particular title and this focus is because we want to understand our current work paradigms, identify those things that are working well for us, as well as those things that could undergo some type of change or reformation. All right. And so we want to identify various topics that's going to allow us to become more effective and more efficient in our efforts. All right. So this is the start of a series, and if you have any feedback or any comments, please share them with us. But for this particular broadcast, we're going to start out with the topic of measuring work. Measuring work. And on this episode, I only want to give you just a very brief introduction, and then we will follow up in subsequent episodes as we move along. All right, let's get started. Measuring work. Why is measuring work important? One, it allows us to accurately understand what's required, all right, in order to meet and achieve um, what needs to be done. The first step is to understand what is required. Without that understanding, we have no way of knowing if we're meeting the requirement or not. All right. Once we basically draw that information out, we need to understand how well do we need to meet that requirement. All right. For some, it may require the major focus is to simply get it done. Get it done. All right. In other instances, it's important that we do it well. All right. And then there may be the hybrid of both of those instances where you need to get it done and it needs to be done well. And there is no space for compromise. All right. Just a quick recap: get it done well, and then get it done both well and get it done. All right. So let's move on. Um, this first block that I'm going to introduce to you allows one to move through steps as it relates to what do you do with work. Once someone says, "Hey, we need to get this done," what does that look like? And so I want to provide you a list of steps that you can consider when measuring your work. First step is identify. Identify the work. Identify the requirement. All right. Within that, then you're going to move to define the work. What exactly are you doing? All right. Define the requirement. What what does this requirement mean and what does it entail? Having that information is going to give you the depth of knowledge that you need to address and begin to work on this requirement. Then the third thing is comprehending and understanding. That goes back to the defining. It's hard to comprehend and understand the work if you don't define it. Okay. And then once you comprehend and understand, you go through the process of building and shaping and producing. All right. You want to build upon that basic understanding. And then you want to shape it because it may require you to apply some level of thought, innovative thought, uh, understanding the contextual environment, understanding the different people that is involved, So there are some variables that must be taken in consideration, which means that you can't just simply take the template of the definition, but you must now go through a process of shaping the work. And from there, as you begin to shape, you start to produce what is required for that moment. Um, all right. And then the fifth thing we're going to look at. So we move from building, shaping, producing to the fifth thing is assess, document, and learn. All right. You want to assess the work that you're doing. Know if you're meeting the requirement or not. All right. Know if you're doing it well or not. And then keeping in mind, knowing if you're doing it and doing it well based on um, what has been assigned. All right. From there, you want to document. You want to document so that you can capture not only the work but the time that it takes to do the work. You want to capture things that, because it's one thing I always say that things are a little bit more nuanced than people tend to realize, is that it's not always black or white, good or bad, up or down. Sometimes there are elements that are good, there are elements that are bad, there are elements that you have done extremely well and effective, and then there are pieces that need attention. It needs to be changed or optimized. And so you need to document accurately those things that go well. So you don't waste a lot of time trying to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed, nor ignore something just because one part is good, then you ignore other parts that are bad, because those things could come back to create inefficiencies later on. So it's important to create some nuance when you're going through this process. And so documentation is going to help identify those nuances and be able to address them accurately. And then finally, learn at that step. That is one of the most important pieces to any organization, to any professional, is that there's always that element of learning, learning, learning. Learning allows us to be able to see and recognize things and to respond appropriately. All right, respond appropriately. And so without learning, that becomes difficult. Okay. And then there's more to say about that later, but we're going to keep moving. All right. And then once we assess, document, and learn, we move to close. All right. You're either going to close, you're going to follow up, or follow through. All right. If you've completed that requirement and you've satisfied everything that needs to get done, simply close it. All right. And then you're ready for the next requirement or the next block of work. If there's something in there that you must follow up, then you want to keep in mind those areas that requires a follow up, because it's essential to complete that action through following up on those different areas. All right. And then maybe this is just the starting point, or maybe it is a point in a series of steps, and you need to follow through. All right. So you're going to follow through to the next set of requirements because it fits into a larger context or larger requirement that you're working on. And so following through is also important. So just to recap that step, you're either going to close the work, you're going to follow up on the work or requirement, or you're going to follow through. And then the final step is to store this information, store this process. And the second part of this step is into a portfolio. Start creating your work portfolio so you understand the different types of work that you've worked on. All right, because under doing that allows you to understand your growth, your development, and it's also a good resource and a good tool when you're moving into a different space, and to quickly be able to share the different types of work and projects that you worked on in the past. All right, so that covers block one. Now I'm going to rapidly move through the second block. And again, we will cover this in a subsequent lesson. All right, the second block. So once you go through measuring work, through identifying, defining, building, shaping, and producing, and then assessing, documenting, and learning, and then closing, following up, and following through, and then storing. What else do we need to consider about work? We need to understand the activities that are involved. Now we're starting to go into the second block. What are the activities involved in this work or in this requirement? What is the level of complexity? Is it a simple work requirement, or is it complex? All right. What are the dependencies and vulnerabilities that's involved with this requirement? What information is required? All right. And then what is the level of knowledge and experience that's required from those that are involved with this work? All right, participating in this work. And then what is the suspense? Is there a suspense? All right. And then what's the timeline? You know, is there, like, you do it at your own free will? You do it arbitrarily? Or is there a timeline where there are certain things that must be done along the way at particular times? And then what are the outputs from this work? Is there an output? All right. And being able to identify that is going to give you to that level of sophistication of understanding what's entailed in this work requirement. And then what are the results and outcomes that are required? And then finally, what is this work or requirement aligned and nested with? All right. You can understand context. It's going to give you, one, the background information while you're doing this work. And background information is critical. It helps you understand what precedes this requirement and work. It helps you to focus on exactly what it is that you're doing, but also helps you to understand that doing this and doing it well allows you to understand how it feeds into that next dimension, that next frame of work. And that if things are done poorly at this stage, then someone else is going to suffer the consequences, or you are going to suffer the consequences of failing to accomplish what needs to be accomplished in this frame. And the opposite or the same is also true in the previous frame. So if there's someone who did their portion poorly and did not get certain things done on time, then that's going to affect how you do your work. And understanding that helps you approach the work appropriately, and so that you don't build up any assumptions that are false, which can also create undesired results. All right, so that was a very dense block of instruction. And so what I want to do moving forward is to start to unpack that. Let's take a look at that. Let's look at some examples of how we can apply measuring work and looking at how you currently do it, maybe incorporating some of these tools that we've laid out, and then look at, how we approach work moving forward and see if there's any improvement. All right. So I want to again thank you for taking the time to join me on this day. And I look forward to being with you once again as we begin to unpack this transformed work paradigms. So until next time, you all take care.